All right, folks, let's continue on with building our ranch house. So we have a foundation now that's ready to go. If you do not have this foundation looking like this, then you need to get my help, or you need to go back and do those assignments that were previous to this one, because it assumes that you have this done. One thing I would like you to do before we go on is turn off the land. So when you come over here, you should have this thing called land and this thing foundation from last time. Turn off the land, okay? And then we're going to come over here to the bottom right. Let me see if I can drag this. Usually I can drag this. Oh, there we go. And down here on the bottom right is display mass properties. You're going to click that display mass properties and then click on the foundation. And you should have what is showing right here. It should have a mass of, look at that, that's 101,944.86 pounds of concrete mass, which is not abnormal, folks. It's got a lot of concrete in there, okay? So if we planned this out, we can also figure out by doing some of this modeling stuff how much we're going to need. A concrete truck holds between 5 and 7 cubic yards of concrete, and then you know what you need to order for that. Okay, so you should have this exact number. It shouldn't be off, because if you did it the way we did it, it should be mimicking this. Tell me if it doesn't. All right, so let's go ahead and get moving on. I'm not sure why I must have a sketch on somewhere. I don't want that on. Where are we here? This isn't your problem. This is my problem. There we go. Yeah, I'm going to just delete that sketch. I use that for something else anyway. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and take a look and move forward. What we're going to do next is do the sill plate, or bottom plate that sits on top of the foundation that the floor joists are then going to rest on. That sill plate is made out of what we call pressure treated lumber. It looks like this. You've seen this stuff before. It used to be green. Now, for whatever reason, the chemicals they use make it brown. So all these little dimples that are in here are where this gets rolled through a machine that pressurizes and injects that board with a chemical that is, it resists both dry rot, which is a type of fungus that will rot out the board. You've seen dry rot if you've ever seen a board that you can kind of push your finger into and it just sort of crumbles. That's called dry rot, and then there's a fungus that eats away the wood that does that. And it's also resistant to termites that do not like to eat that stuff. So that's why it's used anywhere where it sits up against the foundation, because the foundation can be wet, or it can have moisture in it, and moisture is what allows that rot to happen and what termites have to be able to have. Now, most of the time, that sill plate will be anchored down with what we call anchor bolts that stick down into the foundation about 9 inches. I'm not sure what code is now for those things. And then it gets bolted down to the foundation. If you didn't do that, what would happen is the house that's sitting on this thing, if it wasn't bolted down, if there was even a minor earthquake, it would just bounce right off, or even a high wind could just push it off of the foundation. So there has to be something to hold it there. Nowadays, they also use these things called hurricane straps, which are big metal bars that go into the foundation and then get nailed to the sides of the house, especially in high wind areas. You know, if you're on the coast in Florida, those straps are definitely important to help hold your house down in a hurricane. All right, so we're going to build that that plate. Now, normally you'd have to cut this out in pieces and put it on there and everything, but we're building this virtually. So we're going to build one big, long, continuous board, which doesn't exist in real life. But hey, you know what? Here we are, distance learning. We're going to do it anyway. All right, the first thing is we're going to sketch. Be careful that you get the right surface, not here, here, or over there, or whatever. We're going to sketch on this flat surface right here when you're looking towards the front of the house. So we're on that surface while you're hovering over it, right click, and we're going to make a new sketch. Okay, we're sketching on that. We can see the plane. N will view us normal to that sketch plane, and we're going to hover in or zoom into that corner right there. If you don't know where we're zooming in, it's this corner right here that we're going to look at. Okay, so we're coming in here, and we're going to draw a rectangle that represents. We're going to use 2x6 boards. So click on your corner to corner rectangle, start down here in this corner and kind of go up and left. Okay, we're going to click, and that first number, the width of this board is 5.5. So a 2x6 is not really 6 inches wide, nor is it 2 inches thick. So we're going to 5.5 enter. That gets us to the other side where we can do 1.5. And there is our 2x6 board. If you forgot that, remember you can always use the dimension tool. Okay, we're going to save our sketch. Okay, and now let's hold down your right mouse button and tilt a little bit so you can see, because you're going to have to see the whole building. You're probably going to have to zoom in and out a little bit, so you're going to use your mouse wheel. And what we're going to do next is we're going to do a new thing we haven't used before called sweep. And what sweep is going to do is it's going to take that profile, and instead of extrude it, it's going to move it around whatever pathway you choose. So we're going to choose sweep. Okay. We are going to make a new part, so have it show as new, and we're going to start going on our sweep path. Oh, it wants me to choose the region, so we're going to choose this little rectangle. Click on that. Notice it says we had sketch of the face of whatever sketch we were in. You might have a different number depending on what you did. Now we're going to click here to identify the sweep path. So I got to click on sweep path. Notice anything that's blue is active, right? So we're actively looking at the sweep path, and we're going to go around the outside edge. Now be careful you're choosing the right lines. You might have to start this over again if you click on the wrong lines. So we're going on the outside edge of the foundation wall. Click, click. Again, you've got to make sure you learn how to pan and zoom. Click. If you heard that weird noise, that's my dog snoring. She's having some dreams. And click over there. Uh-oh, should continue. There we go. Had to click that one twice. And looks like we're going all the way around. We've got 4 corners, and we've chosen 4 edges. We're gonna say, okay, good. Okay, now, oh, I did something wrong. It combined it. So I'm going to go back. Now you might have done this too. We should have another part down here. If you did what I did and messed up, you can always go back and edit these things by double clicking on them. And I was supposed to click new. So somewhere in there it changed to add. I do want it to be new. And it's going to create some random color. It might be this blue color for you. I don't know. We're going to say, okay, good. Yes, I want it to be new. All right, now we need the board that's going to go in the middle of this. So let's tilt this up and look straight down at the top. Okay. Actually, I take that back. I want to tilt it a little bit to make sure I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to sketch right on this surface right here. Make sure that you're clicking so that that whole surface shows when you do it. So right here, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to start a new sketch on that. Now let's either use the view cube and click on it, or just new, or sorry, N for view normal. Okay, don't worry about this sketch plane that shows up. It's just showing you where it is. It goes on and on and on forever. Now, kind of like we did last time, I'm just going to make a random rectangle, and I'm not going to size it. I'm just going to make it approximate, like maybe up here. Okay. Just make a random rectangle. Don't worry about what the sizes are. In fact, we're just going to hit escape to get rid of the dimensions. I do want to dimension one thing, which is from that line to that line is going to be 5.5. So 2 by 6. Okay. Now shrunk it a lot. That's okay. Escape will get me out of the dimension command. And we're doing this kind of like we did the last time, where I'm going to put a point in the middle, that when that little square shows up, of that end, and another point in the middle of that end. And I'm going to put a point in the middle of the board that I just made. Be careful where you're hovering. See that little square that shows up on the inside. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Click. Notice I'm not babying you quite so much. I'm being a little faster because we already did this once, so you should be able to do it pretty fast this time. Escape to get me out of the point command, and I'm going to do my coincident constraint to lock together this point. Remember, don't grab lines or anything like that. We just want that point that I made is going to get locked to that point I made, and then we're going to go to the other side and lock that point with that point. There. So now we've got a board that is 5.5 thick and it meets the other ends. Finish that sketch. And now it's going to be a little tricky. You got to see what you're doing. We're going to extrude that little rectangle that we just made. Make sure you've got that rectangle and not something else. Click. We're going to make sure we're going upward, which we are, and we're going to go 1.5 inches. Now, it is really important that we are adding it, and we're going to, our merge scope down here, it says, well, what do you want to add it to? We're going to add it to part 3. Okay, so I am adding 1.5 inches, and we clicked merge scope, and then we clicked part 3 to merge it with that and make it part of the same part. Cool. So now we have our sill plate. Okay. Now the garage will be a little different because we're building walls to go on the garage. Those aren't going to have joists, so we're going to do that later. Cool. So let's do this, please. And over here on part 3. Let's right click on that and rename it. And we're going to call that sill plate. Enter. And let's assign it a material. Right click, assign material. Now in your library down here, when you click on this, if you scroll down to the D's, there actually is Douglas fir, which is the most common lumber, including pressure treated. Pressure treated is still Doug fir. It's the most common lumber that we have in California, at least for building materials. So we're going to make it out of Doug fir. Blue is weird. If you want to, you can make these things whatever color you want. I think I'm going to edit the appearance to make it more like an actual brownish board. But if you like blue or whatever it shows up, I don't really care if you want to make your house all bizarro colors. Cool. All right, we've got that. We got our sill plate. We're ready to move on and now make our joist. Now, if you will remember, we put this whole wall in the middle of this thing in the first place because it's 32 feet across this, and there's no 32 feet joist. So, but we can use two 16-footers. So it spans from here to the middle and then from here to the other end. Now, in the middle are going to be what's called ledgers, or they're boards that the joists are going to go up against. And we're going to start with one in the very, very middle. So that, but first we need to know what our material is going to be. So let's see what our span is. So one of the things that you can do here is come down here to the bottom right and use our tape measure. Click on that little tape measure, and we need to see how far it is. Zoom in from this edge right here, click, and we're going to have to kind of flip around. It's a little bit tricky, to this edge on the top of the other board on the other side. Now, if I zoom out a little bit, it's getting a parallel distance between those two lines is 183.75 inches. Okay, so that is the distance that we're going to span. So let's remember that, 183.75. In fact, let's convert that 183.75 divided by 12 to see how many feet we got. It's 15.3 feet, which is about 15 feet 4 inches. We could figure it out exactly, but I think that's going to be close enough. Let's call it 15 feet 4 inches. Now, this chart is from the CBC, California Building Code, that tells us what we have to use. We're going to put our joist at 16 inches on center. Okay, if you use more, you can get away with less. And we want to know what the smallest board size is, so to save us some money when we've got a dead load of 10 pounds per square foot. So that means people and furniture and stuff like that that's going to be in the house. And we need to know what we can get away with. And when we buy our lumber, most likely what we're going to get is Doug fir 2 and better. So what these numbers mean is there's structural select, which is the most expensive you can get. Number 1 structural, number 2. Number 2 will have a few more knots and things in it. And then you don't usually see a number 3. That's not really a thing. So take a look at this table and see what you think we can, the smallest size board we can use. And don't just wait for me to tell you. Let's see if you can learn how to read a chart like this. And what can we use? Right, remember I said that we can go a maximum of 15 feet 4 inches. Now, I happen to know that you get a little leeway on here. This one says the maximum span you can go. Well, the maximum span is 15 feet 5 inches with a 2x10. So we're still less than that and we're still okay. You just can't go more than that. So we're going to be able to use a 2x10. And that's what we're going to use to span across this thing. All right, so back to here. So we know we're going to use 2x10s. We're going to start off with this middle part. Now I'm going to kind of go around to the side of the house over here. And we're going to start a sketch right here. And I'm going to do a couple of different sketches here. Well, I'm going to start on this edge out here. Right click, new sketch. Okay, we're again going to go N to view normal to. All right, now I'm going to draw. Remember how we keep putting these little points in here? I'm going to draw a rectangle. I might have to zoom in a little bit. Whoops, I'm on text. Corner to corner rectangle. And this time that rectangle is going to be, I'm going to click. It's going to be 1.5 because it's a 2x, enter, and the length of it is 9.25 is about what a 2x10 is. So we got a 9.25 by 1.5. All right, now it's a little tricky because we're going to have to zoom in a ways, place our point on here, like we've been doing, zoom out. You probably have to kind of scroll a little bit because it's going to be tricky. And we're going to zoom in again and put a point right in the middle of the top of that board. It's a little hard to see. If you need to kind of move around, make sure you know what you're looking at right there. And we're going to do our coincident constraint between this point and this point. Cool. Now, I'm going to do this same thing on the other ends. But I'm going to view normal to this, but this time instead of doing the whole point thing, you can just draw a rectangle. I'm going to zoom way into this corner, and we're going to draw a 2-point rectangle starting at this corner, going in, click. It's going to be 1.5, enter, and the other side is 9.25. Enter. And finally, we're going to zoom out, zoom over to the other side, and click on this corner, zoom in, 1.5, enter, 9.25. All right, now I'm thinking ahead a little bit, so I'm going to do something a little different. I'm not going to extrude all of these at the same time. Check. Okay. Now we're going to make a new material. So here's what I'm going to do. Zoom it out. Got to be able to move around. Zoom in a little bit so I can see this. So I am going to extrude this shape. I want to go the other direction though, because I want to go the other way. And we're going to do 42 feet. Remember, that's how long the house is. 42 times 12. Okay. And I'm going to say, okay. It's a little weird that I made this all part of one piece instead of a separate board but you know, again, we're in the virtual world. I think that's okay. So the last extrude that you made, it's okay to add it to that. Now I only did this middle one. I'll get back to the other ones later. There's a reason. All right, I think that's going to be good enough for today. This video is starting to get a little long, and I know it takes you guys a while. There's a learning curve to do this. And you probably have to pause and redo some things, so that's okay. Last thing to do today is we are going to use that sketch. Remember, we drew 3 of those rectangles, but only extruded 1. So I'm going to find that sketch. See that sketch? It should be just one up that has those rectangles on it. If you hover, it'll show up. Right click on that, and we're going to rename that sketch, and let's just call it Long Joists. Joints. Long Joists. Okay, so we know that there's a sketch called Long Joist that we'll come back to later. All right, so let's go ahead and bring that back around. It's okay to leave the land off. In fact, it would be good just to kind of zoom in like that so you can see, so I can see that board in the middle, and your sills. Take a good image of that, and we will work on the joists that are going all the way across and patterning them next time. It'll be kind of cool. All right. Remember, as always, you got to contact me if you're having difficulty. I'm assuming you're keeping up, and we will see you next time.